So let's talk about the calling and commitment of St. Peter. Acts chapter 1, verse 8, the disciples, minus Judas, the 11, are with Jesus. And Jesus says to them, "You will be my witnesses." What does a witness do? A witness tells what they have seen, right? And Jesus says, "You're going to be my witnesses in Jerusalem," the main city in Judea, the whole countryside, in Samaria, which is a territory just north of Judea, and a place where the occupants are very much opposed to, there's internecine strife or brotherly kind of strife between those who live in Judea and those who live in Samaria, and to the remotest part of the earth. You're going to tell what you've seen. And in fact, as we look through the book of Acts, as we read it, that's what they do. They tell what they've seen, and the gospel message, the Jesus message, expands from Jerusalem, where the events happened that we were just talking about in the last lecture, the crucifixion, the resurrection, where things happen there, where Jesus utters this statement of extreme commitment to one's calling. "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." Things happen there, and they mushroom out from Jerusalem at the center to the remotest part of the earth, at that time Rome, right? So Simon Peter's calling is the same kind of calling that the rest of the disciples get, and calling is always wonderful. I'm going to be this. I'm going to do that. This is what I believe I should do with my life. It's where the adversity comes, where we find one's commitment to the calling, and where one is, where we demonstrate, are we really called to said thing? So what happens after this calling in Acts chapter 1? Well, the Holy Spirit falls on the church at Pentecost, which is a feast about 50 days after Passover. And this inaugurates a new era. In fact, it is the birth, very often we talk about it this way, the birth of the Christian church. And Peter has this breakout speech in which he references the prophet Joel. And he says, "You guys that are looking at us, let me tell you what this is. This is the thing that Joel prophesied." And then goes on to explain that. Peter preaches this sermon in Acts chapter 2. In Acts chapter 3, we find Simon Peter and John heading into the temple. And a beggar is there and asking for alms, right? For an offering of some kind. And Simon Peter looks at him and says, "Silver and gold I don't have, but what I do have I'll give to you," and heals this guy, right? And so there's great rejoicing. But this causes some conflict. Why does it cause conflict? Because now, all of a sudden, you have this, same as you had with Jesus' miracles, you have this continuation of the work of Jesus with the disciples, and this Jesus cult that the leaders were trying to get rid of is being perpetuated. And that brings a power dynamic. As you can tell, when I look at the gospel, I commonly think about political terms as well. But it brings a power dynamic. What happens if we lose control here of the people? What happens if we lose their allegiance? What happens if we lose their faith? And so we need to stop this. In Acts chapter 4, Peter and John are arrested. And they are tried, in a sense, not to the same degree that you have with Jesus at the end of the book of Luke, but they are arrested for actually doing good. They heal this guy, they announce Jesus, they announce the resurrection of Jesus, and this is the guts of the Christian gospel, the resurrection of Jesus. They announce that, and then they're arrested, as I said, and then they're warned. So the leaders say, look, don't go preaching anymore in the name of this Jesus. What happens from that? Now, Simon Peter and John have been involved in a healing of this guy. They have preached about that. They have been arrested for it, and now they're being tried. And the leaders think, well, we'll just warn them, look, don't do this anymore. And Simon Peter says, can't do it. I can't stop talking about that which I've seen. I can't stop being a witness, right? I'm going to obey God rather than obey humans. Now here, Simon Peter is demonstrating his commitment to his calling. His commitment in the face of just having kind of dodged the bullet, right? Got out of jail. I'm getting out of jail, and now I'm being warned. And what am I going to do? I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing, and you guys are going to have to deal with that. And I'm going to accept the consequences of my actions. In fact, this is not in the biblical text, it is in the tradition. The tradition is that Simon Peter was going to be crucified as Jesus was. And he said, that is, Simon Peter said, I'm not worthy to be crucified like my Lord, and asked to be crucified upside down. The tradition says that that's how Peter died. Crucifixion would be an awful death anyway. I can't imagine what it would be like to endure that kind of death. But there's so many other Christian martyrs. I can't imagine what it would be like to endure the kind of death that they've died, some of them. It's in the face of adversity that we demonstrate what we really believe about our calling. Do we quit, or do we keep on going? Now, I've talked mostly about the scriptures in the preceding lectures. In the next lecture, which is, we're going to try to turn this around and make it more real for where we are, where we live. What do we think about when it comes to calling and commitment? And maybe these examples from the New Testament will mean something to us there.